Well,
Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of A Man's Girl USA. I am really excited because today I have a guest that I'm going to introduce short in a little bit, but he's got a really amazing military background beyond what he's done in his life. I mean, he's an amazing guy, but I'll let him tell you guys about himself a little bit before we get into the nitty gritty of what's happening in our awesome nation. Let's just start with the left. Does anybody else feel the dismantling of their party, not just their party, but their narratives? What concerns me is that the Democrats were doing whatever they wanted. And then instead of the Republicans fighting back and saying, hey, wait a minute, something's wrong here. We were being the polite Republicans, the conservatives. Oh no, we can't say anything. We don't want it. That's them. They fight. We don't do that. We're going to do it the right way. You know what? I'm done. I'm done with that. And I'm telling politicians in Oklahoma, the Republicans and the Conservative Party, this is right here. This is your notice. We're not sitting back, and we're not going to be polite. We're going to fight first, and we're going to bring things to light, and we're going to fight for it. If you're running on a certain platform and certain policies and you're a conservative and you don't stick to that, guess what? We're going to hold you accountable. Because what's happened since the left stole the election in 2020, they ran amok. It's kind of like whenever the teacher, I've used this example, teacher leaves the classroom and they're all running amok and running wild. And then all of a sudden the teacher comes back. Okay, that's Trump. Okay, Trump came back and now it's like, what are you guys doing? That's kind of what we're at right now. So we're undoing all of the crazy bullshit, the thievery, the child sex trafficking. The Biden administration, they were taking a cut from the cartel. You don't lose over 300,000 children at the border. It doesn't happen. Then those crazy lunatics come back at us when Trump was trying to send people back, the illegals, the criminals, and they were screaming, oh, you're separating the children from the parents. Where were you when these kids were being sex trafficked? And I'm like, I don't want to hear it. I want them to shut their damn mouth, and I want them to just let us clean up this mess. And so that these kids that we start recovering and finding can finally have a life of peace. You know, some of these little girls are committing suicide when they're after 5 years of being in sex trafficked, and they were started when they were 6 or 7, and now they're teenagers and they can't live with themselves. Like, there's a lot of damage, and I know I'm unpacking a lot here, but I haven't been on in a while, so I had a lot to say. I have more, but I don't want to keep my guests waiting. I am so excited because I have a guest who is coming on. He has got an amazing background. Not just because of his military experience, but what he does for a living in his career. You have to be a kind, compassionate person, in my opinion, to do the job that this man does. He's a patriot, loves our country. And I'm going to let him tell you a little bit about himself. But without further ado, ladies and gents, Mr. Tim Hayes. Hi, Tim.
Hey, Amy. Thanks for having me on today. Everybody, I'm Tim Hayes. I live in Virginia, and I started my life in high school, musically talented. Didn't think I was smart enough to go to college. Ended up joining the Army, became a combat medic. Desert Storm broke out. I was stationed at Fort Huachuca in Arizona, and I was a combat medic there working in the ER. And I got to do a lot of amazing stuff and had a lot of great teachers during that time. Ended up attending a local community college, got my EMTI, my paramedic. And Desert Storm broke out, was immunizing a lot of people. Had two school requests. One was for flight school, one was for respiratory therapy school. And the Army selected me for that. I wasn't sure if I was getting deployed. I was on the next list of 10 people, and I knew when the school started, and I had not gotten orders. And that school has a 70% failure rate. And I wanted to take some leave, and I ended up not getting any leave and had to drive from Fort Huachuca to San Antonio to Fort Sam Houston, where I ended up graduating probably in the top 5 of the 30 of us that made it through phase 1.
Wow.
And ended up back at Fort Jackson, where I was a licensed respiratory therapist in the state of South Carolina. Actually, at that time, I'm not sure if we had licensure. It shortly thereafter came. I worked part-time at a big trauma center as a civilian while I was active Army, and got a ton of experience. It was a major trauma center in Columbia, Bristol Memorial Hospital, and we had gunshots and you just name it, coming through the ER. I got a lot of experience with independent lung ventilation when it was a thing back in the day. Actually transitioned from active duty to the South Carolina Army National Guard, where I finished out my second year of respiratory in a 4-month accelerated program. So I ended up doing a 2-year school in a year and started to see that I was smarter than I thought I was. At the time I was in high school. And so I've now been a respiratory therapist 34 years. I actually went back into the reserves. So I've actually been active duty, National Guard, and reserves. I went into the 312th Field Hospital when I was working at a hospital in Greensboro. A physician was a friend of mine who I had no idea who was the commanding officer of that unit. He wanted me to go to PA school and come back and be his PA. And long story short, there it didn't work out. I just didn't feel like giving 6 years of my life to pay for 2 more years of school to become a PA for that unit.
Right.
I just didn't see that it was doable at that time. That's another story. Other military people, they know what short timer syndrome is. A lot of people in that unit actually had short timer syndrome. It took a lot to get things done. So I've been a respiratory therapist. Everything I've ever got in my life, I've earned it. I've never been given anything. I've had some amazing people in my life. I like to put out there that I have struggled with alcoholism and cocaine addiction from the age of 25 to 35. I'm now 55. I've had no alcohol in my body for 20 years now. I do work a 12-step program.
Congratulations. That's amazing. That's an amazing accomplishment. Yeah.
If someone like me can do it, anybody can do it, because I was about dead at 34 twice. I about died twice at 34 years old. And I was working in an ER, and I would see a patient come in who was withdrawn from alcohol. And I kept thinking, this is you, man, in the mornings, dude, until you put that drink in your body. So, I've learned a lot. God put some amazing men in my life. Starting in 2005, when I got sober, I started to learn to love me. And I was told in early recovery, we will love you until you learn to love yourself. And that, I didn't realize the impact that had at the time in my life. But 20 years later, I see that I started to love me. And then I rededicated my life back to Christ. And God still puts these amazing people in my life to show me things.
Yes.
And now that I love me, all of my patients get all of me. And the people I work with get all of me because I actually love me now. My patients often see God's love and light come through me. And, that is humbling for me.
Yes.
To know where I came from to where I'm at today, that God is using me as a channel to show people his light and love. It's very humbling. For me, I love our country. I've always been a fan of President Trump. I'm also on several LinkedIn platforms. I'm administrator for 2 different conservative groups. I was humbled to be asked by those the 2 founders of the groups to be an administrator for those groups. And I think it's because of what I often post and what I believe in, God, country, and service. I know that I'm doing the service work. I know that I have a godly connection. And my country, I love the United States, because I would not be where I'm at today if not because of this country and serving the Army. I owe the Army a debt of gratitude, one that I'll probably never be able to pay back. So I try to live my life today paying that forward. Is how I present myself. Christianity for me, I wouldn't say it was forced down me when I was younger, but I know from what I've seen by several of those men who were putting my life in early recovery, they had what I want. They had that peace, that wisdom, that knowledge. And one of those guys was my sponsor, and he's still a dear friend of mine. He lives in Morgantown, West Virginia. He said, if you want what I've got, you got to do what I did to get it. And that's what I've done. And, my life today is amazing. I don't like where a lot of this stuff is going in our country from the left side. I was watching the news this morning. and saw these Democratic socialists. There are several people running for mayors in Midwestern. We got the guy in New York. Sometimes I think people just need to live. I feel sorry for the people who believe in our country, and believe in our Constitution, and believe in our God-given freedoms, who live in those cities. And if they do get elected, what's going to come?
Yeah.
I've already, God has given me one thing, and I know, and it's the gift of premonition. And I see what's coming. If you live in those cities and those people, those Democratic socialists get elected, you best have a plan to be able to move out.
Yes.
It's
yes.
coming.
Let me start by saying to you, we all owe a debt of gratitude to people like you who have served our country. So thank you from the bottom of my heart for your service to our beautiful, amazing country. That going on to what you were saying, I didn't mean to distract, but because I think it's important always for people to always thank a veteran when they have the opportunity and they're facing them. Like personally, thank you. But this socialism, communism, really. What is his name? Zohan Mamdani. Yeah, he's an asshole and he's an idiot. And he doesn't even care. I'm trying to figure out if George Soros is paying him, and has he been groomed for the last 10 years to get to this point? Because he's just really a spoiled kid who was born with a silver spoon in his mouth. He doesn't know about socialism. He's being paid and groomed to ruin our country because they hate America. All of these people who are running that are not even from America, they weren't even born here, they should not be allowed to run. But my point to what you're saying is these mayors that are doing this are ruining the small town America. I mean, so what do you think about people running for mayor or any kind of office in America, whether it's local, state, or federal? Do you think they should be allowed if they're not American-born citizens?
I think if you hold any elected office, you should be born in America.
Yeah,
without
I
question.
agree with that. Yeah.
And there should be legitimate proof that you were born here. That's the way I learned it. That's the way I've always felt. I still have questions if Obama was born here. I used to play a veterans league, golf league at Belvoir, and this is when President Obama was in office, and his entourage would show up. Our veterans league would tee off at about 8 o'clock, and somewhere, it takes about 2 hours for the first nine. We would get locked down by Secret Service because President Obama was on the driving range, and he would tee off at like 10:30 or 11. So our golf round would get interrupted. Now, this is the president. He could play any private golf course he wants, but he chose to go to Belvoir to hold up, hundreds of people who mostly of us were veterans. And I remember talking to some Secret Service agents. They despised him.
Yeah.
I just really hate your face.
I'll give President Obama credit. He's got a pretty decent looking golf swing. He's left-handed. He's got a pretty good looking golf swing. But I was very close to him. They rearranged some of the holes because they put the Army Museum in. Mm-hmm. I know the pro who runs the golf course there, Fritz. And I was walking because I didn't make it to the tee time that morning. So I ended up walking right after President Obama had teed off. And it was a retired CW4, and we were playing, and out of the woods come these Secret Service agents, and they're like, as you know, President Obama is like 2 or 3 holes ahead of you, and you mind if we search your golf bags? I'm like, help yourself. You ain't gonna find nothing but golf balls and water in there, maybe a snack. And so we got up. It was a par 5, and I was putting for birdie, and all these golf carts are lined all the way around, and no one's really watching him teeing off on the par 3, which was beside the green pretty much. The only thing separated was the car path. So I was literally 20, 30 yards from the President Obama then. And everybody was like watching me to make the putt. They didn't care anything about him. But I didn't make the putt. I lifted out on the top side, tapped in for par. But anyway, and that just kind of brought that up. I haven't been able to golf much. That is one thing I do love. I'm also
that's awesome.
Was formerly a semi-pro cyclist. As I've gotten older, my body has said there's certain things we cannot do. So I've had to learn how to, in early recovery, I was taught to replace bad habits with good habits or bad hobbies with good hobbies.
Mhm.
And so cycling and golfing and fishing have been my things. So I've been lucky to do any of those here lately. But
That's
I know
great,
that
though.
I'm in a place right now where God's
Mhm.
probably grooming me for something, and I just pray and I do my Bible studies with a group of guys that I've got,
Yeah.
and stay connected. That's what I know to do. Just be patient, and that's something that I've never had. I often say that when the good Lord was passing out patience, I was at the very end of the line, and He was almost out.
Yeah. I think it ran out with me. I keep thinking I'm going to do better the older I get, because a lot of people do, but no. I've been told, oh, when you get older, you'll learn how to talk slow and you'll be calm. And I'm like, that hasn't happened to me yet, but okay.
Yeah, I
That's
always say
awesome.
I am the most patient I've ever been right now.
That's a good quality to have.
My wife is super patient, and she is one that believes and trusts God and His plan. And she's someone I've actually been able to learn a lot from when it comes to trusting His plan. It's very hard for me to do, but I'm learning. As long as I remain teachable, there's hope.
Yes, absolutely. And I think that, first of all, kudos to you, because we have to stop thinking that we know everything. And I don't know everything, but this is what helps me evolve as a person, is picking up on those lessons and like the faith that your wife has passed on to you, of like trusting God's plan. It's good to be able to be in positions where you do have to turn to God. I was watching this movie called God's Not Dead, but I was watching it with the first one, and there's a scene where the guy's a lawyer. He's a rich lawyer or a rich business guy, and his mom is kind of getting Alzheimer's, and he's in a dark room with her. She's just like staring into space in the dark, and he says, "You've done everything right your whole life. You've been a good Christian. You've raised your kids, done this, and look at you." Like basically saying, you've lost your mind. You don't know who you are anymore. He said, "And here I am, never really done anything, but everything's just been easy for me. And look at what a success I am," basically is what he said. And then she just, out of nowhere, she speaks, and she's just looking out into the space, staring out into space. And she says, "Sometimes God gives us obstacles and hard things in life so we can turn to Him. And if you don't figure that out before it's too late, the door's going to shut on you." I mean, it was just very powerful. And the look on his face, like, he kind of got it for a second, then he didn't. And I'm thinking, yeah, just because you've had a cushy life, that would worry me. That would actually worry me, because
Yeah,
you give thanks for the things that you have. You're grateful. You don't just pray for things that you want. You learn to pray to give thanks for everything that He's given you, for overcoming obstacles in life, for becoming a better person. I mean, all of those things are gifts. And if you've always had a cushy life and never really, are you going to really know this? I mean, I don't know.
no,
It's a good
absolutely
something to think
not.
about. Yeah.
Absolutely. The hair stood up on my body with that one. I always know that the truth is being spoken when the hair stands up on my body. Uh, I wanted to go back to what you were saying about hugging the veterans wear their hats. I've got a couple of hats, but I walked into the hospital yesterday morning, or it might have been Saturday. No, it was yesterday, Sunday, Monday. Yeah, it was yesterday morning,
Mm-hmm.
and there was a guy sitting there. He was a Vietnam veteran, and I said, "Thank you for your service," and he said, "You're welcome." And I didn't even bother to say that I'm a veteran also. My Uncle Bobby is still my real life hero. He served 2 tours in Nam, and
Wow.
it was my dad's baby brother. And I talk to him every week. And just over the last few years, I've been able to express to him what he's meant to me. He's been like a big brother, a father figure.
Mm-hmm.
I watched him go through what I call hell on earth for up to about probably about the last 20 years. And I don't know what happened. I don't know if it was age, wisdom, medication. I don't know. But he seems to have come to some kind of closure with whatever it is he experienced in Vietnam. Because I remember praying for him. Him and my dad had a resentment for years. They wouldn't talk. And it was Christmas time, they walked by each other, and I'm walking with my biological dad, and I'm like, "You need to fix that, dude." And he's like, "I've tried." I'm like, "Well, you obviously didn't try hard enough." And they did. They were able to fix that. When it was over, their parents, my grandparents, passed away in property and all that stuff. And, my Uncle Bobby, he lives like a hermit, but he's my real life hero. He's a very humble guy. This is a man who, his brother was married to my mother. Well, the divorce happened. It was just me and my mom. So I dealt with abandonment issues. My dad was never really there as I was growing up. And my Uncle Bobby, when my mom remarried my stepfather, Ken, this is the kind of man he is. He would come pick my stepfather up and drive him to the VA in Salisbury every month. And they spent time talking. And I kept thinking what it would be like just to be sitting in the back of that car listening to that conversation. Yeah. I would give big money to be able to go back to that.
Yeah, I bet it was interesting and meaningful. I don't blame you. I would want to know, be a fly on the wall, listening to some of that, you figure out later in life that on borrowed time, It goes by so fast. Yeah, it's important. Family's important. So tell me what you think about Pete Hegseth. Do you like him? Do you think he's doing a good job so far? Or?
I think he took a lot of bashing, you might call it, early on, and people didn't really get to know the real Pete. I don't really know a lot about him, but I definitely have to respect the fact that he's a Navy SEAL. And he seems to be doing a great job right now. I like the fact that he stands strong with our president, and the fact that he's probably bringing a lot of well-to-do change in the Pentagon. So I guess, time always sees. I try not to prejudge anybody. Yeah. My gut tells me he's a good person at heart and his intentions mean well.
Yeah, sometimes you can just see it. I think, you were saying God gifted you with the gift of premonition. I feel the gifts that God has given me too is being able to read people and just kind of have really strong intuition about people. So I always felt like that. I think most everybody on his cabinet and President Trump's cabinet are really deep down inside are good people, as opposed to some of the evil people you just can tell by looking. Like Adam Schiff is one of those people. I just look at him, I'm like, you're just pure evil. I don't even want to know what you've done in your life behind closed doors. That's the feeling I get from him. It's really sick feeling. But with Pete, the left, the evil, crazy left, the Senate hearings and the confirmations were brutal. If you think about how they talk to him.
I have many concerns about your record and particularly your public statements, because they are so hurtful to the men and women who are currently serving in the U.S. military. You will have to change how you see women to do this job well, and I don't know if you are capable of that.
I am focused on your fitness to serve, including your character and temperament and your overall qualifications to do the job. Since you became a legal adult, have you ever made unwanted requests for sexual favors or committed any verbal or physical harassment or assault of a sexual nature?
Investigated, and I was completely cleared.
I don't think completely cleared is accurate, but I have read multiple reports of your regularly being drunk at work. Yes or no?
Multiple false anonymous reports peddled by NBC News
that
run directly contradictory to the dozens of men and women at Fox News Channel who I work with
I'm not
who came
hearing
on
the
the
answer
record
to my question.
And said they
in your
never
opening statement, Mr. Hegseth,
absolutely.
Will you resign as Secretary of Defense if you drink on the job, which is a 24/7 position? You resign as Secretary of Defense.
I've made this commitment on behalf of the men and women I'm serving.
I'm not
because it's the most important deployment of my life.
I'm not hearing an answer to my question, so I'm going to move on.
At that time, you were still married to your second wife, correct? So you think you are completely cleared because you committed no crime. That's your definition of cleared? You had just fathered a child 2 months before by a woman that was not your wife. I am shocked that you would stand here and say you're completely cleared. Can you so casually cheat on a second wife and cheat on the mother of a child that had been born 2 months before, and you tell us you are completely cleared? And she was, and you cheated on the mother of that child less than 2 months after that daughter was born, didn't you? You claim that this was all anonymous. We have seen records with names attached to all of these, including the name of your own mother. So don't make this into some anonymous press thing.
Yes or no? I don't want a long answer. Yes or no? Have you led an audit of any organization of which you were in charge?
Senator, in both of the organizations I ran, we were always completely fiscally responsible.
Yes or no? Did you lead an audit?
And the way
yes
my
or
leadership
no? Did you lead an audit?
stated
Yes or no?
Completely
what are you afraid of? You can't answer this question. Yes or no? Did you lead an audit? Do you not know this answer?
Senator, every
yes or
part
no?
of my leadership
yes
of these
no?
organizations
yes
has
or
been
no? Did you lead an audit?
misrepresented.
I will take that as a no.
You know, because he cheated on his wife. Okay, again, I say to you, no one on this earth has any room to throw stones. And the very people who are probably the worst of the worst were throwing huge rocks at that poor guy. And I remember thinking he handled it like a rock star.
It also builds character.
Yes, it's a good characteristic. Yes, you're exactly right. It builds character. I feel like he showed that he was beyond qualified for that after dealing with that, shit show.
I actually think a lot of people are jealous of him because he looks young. He's kind of got that GQ look. The people that did that probably ought to take a look at themselves. Back to the cheating thing.
Yes.
It takes two people.
I always say that. It takes two to make a marriage work, and it takes two to make it end.
If the wife cheats on the husband, they need to come together and find out, because somebody's needs are not being met, and vice versa. If the man cheats on the woman, some need was not being met, and it's basically it's down to communication. You need to communicate with the person you love most, your wife, your husband, whoever.
Yes.
Work through it.
You are 100% right on that. And it's amazing because I've never actually had this conversation with anybody except for like my fiance. We've talked about things like that. And I always tell them, listen, it takes two to make a marriage work and it takes two to make it end. And I've said the same thing. Somebody's needs were not being met. Now, was it right for that person to step out? No, but listen, again, nobody can throw stones. So just because somebody made a mistake and handled it wrong doesn't mean that it doesn't take away from the fact that there was something missing. And like you said, a lot of it is both parties are missing something. They don't ever communicate it, or they do, and it turns into a fight because you have to be open to taking accountability, saying what you need, taking that without criticism, like let's have this conversation so that we can make this work and work on that. Resolution is everything. Resolution, validation, those things go together to make it work. Yep. So that's amazing you said that. I've never known anybody else who said that, but it kind of struck me as odd because I've never heard anybody else say that. So that was cool.
To the people who brought that up to Pete Hegseth, I would suggest that they take a look at their own life. And it's rather disgusting to me that you would bring that up in that kind of hearing. And basically it shows that you're casting a stone and that you shouldn't be casting, because it just boils down to a person's, that couple's relationship and that simple communication gap. And you're taking that and you're blowing it out of proportion, which a lot of the left people often do. They misconstrue words, they manipulate it to fit their agenda. That's the other thing. I even experienced the political wokeness in the healthcare setting, which, I'm going to just leave it there. It seems to be getting a little better, but, we used to be able to joke and cut up and say a lot of things and that were never meant to be harmful. It was meant to get a laugh out of people because, when you have a job like I do, I'm a critical thinker. People's lives are in my hands. I deal with trauma every single day, death and trauma. And how do you deal with that? Right now, currently, I'm not able to golf. I'm not able to cycle. My back is pretty messed up where fishing is going to be trouble also. So how do I deal with that? Usually laughter. I've always said laughter is one of the best medicines we can give. Mm-hmm. So, a lot of that actually went away and people were afraid to say anything that was afraid of going to offend somebody, Yeah. But hopefully, a lot of that, don't get me wrong. I have friends who are gay and they choose to be that way. And I have friends who are lesbian.
Mhm.
You know, my job is to not push my beliefs upon them. Just like any alcoholic or addict I've ever worked with, I've kind of viewed it as my job to be a support system to show them that I'm going to love you regardless. My love for you is unconditional, and I'm going to be here to support and help you. Now, there does come a point where enabling falls into there. So you got to have healthy boundaries, and that took time and experience working with others to get to that point.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah. I agree with you. I have a dear friend of mine who passed away. He was my best friend. He was a big 6'5", gun-toting gay Republican. He was pretty awesome. I don't know anybody who didn't learn to love him. I mean, everybody, straight guys, conservatives. I mean, people who were judgmental, they ended up just loving him because he's just had an amazing personality. He had a really big heart. But one time we were like sitting at the bar having a cocktail, and he looks at me out of nowhere and says, "Do you think I'll go to heaven?" And I said, "Why?" And he said, I go, "Why are you asking me that?" And he goes, "Well, because I'm gay." I said, "Listen, I'm going to be very forthright with you. Bible's clear about what God thinks about gay, okay? Gayness, whatever. But that's not for me to decide. I mean, that's between you and God. That's totally between you and God. I don't have the right to judge you. I can't tell you the answer to your question right now. That's something that you need to have that conversation with Christ." And, so I told him, "I love you no matter what." He never got to meet my fiance, but I was dating him and I told him about him. And so he was really happy for me when he was in the hospital. But I went up there and saw him and spent time with him. I shaved his face. Like, I just gave him the love. And, the last thing he said to me was when I was leaving, before he went into a coma and then passed away, I just took him from the face and I kissed him on the lips. And he said, "I love you." I said, "I love you too." And I left. And I remember that was the last time I got to talk to him. But I don't regret. I mean, he was amazing. I know people, well, and I'm just going to say this before I move on. To me, I felt like those 2 weeks that he was in a coma was like time. So there has to be some kind of, I feel like that was a gift for him. And I hope to see him again someday, but there are people, Tim, who are so judgmental. And I'm talking, again, no room to be casting stones, but you can feel the hate by what they say on social media. And I mean, it's like you act like you're so holier than like you are because you go to church every week, whatever, but you don't seem to have learned a lot. For what you go to church every week, what do you learn when you're there? Because all I'm hearing is a bunch of hate. Christ doesn't want us to hate.
I've had several conversations with people on social media like that who claim to be Christian and they come after me. And I usually just say, "I'll pray for you." And I do. I pray for those people because they're obviously are not in a life position where they've have learned what the Bible teaches us. God's love is. I've learned more about that in the last 10 years, and how they always say that when we're born, God sends us a guardian angel, and I look back on that. My guardian angel was really busy up until I was about 35 years of age, and I've been able to give that guardian angel a little break. But I look back on my life and I've had friends from high school who one died at 38, and I'm 55 now, and I often think about that guy, and life is short, and it's like I've always felt like God's always watched over me, even when I haven't been in the position that I am now spiritually, mentally, and emotionally. It's humbling to really process that and think about that, how much God loves and it's not just me, he loves everybody like that.
Yeah.
And to get to that position, to be able to see it is humbling.
It's a gift
to me.
It is actually, it is a true gift from Christ. It really is. And I thank God for that too. I do every day. I thank God for that ability to have the faith and the recognition of what he's given me, as being able to see all of his blessings and how much he loves us on earth and everybody. And just, it's sad though, because you have this whole Palestine and Israel thing, and I'm very vocal about it. Listen, they're all God's people, but I can't say one positive thing about Israel, because then I get these leftists throw my religion in my face and say, you can have all the crosses you want, but you're an evil bitch. I've had people say this to me because I have my crosses by my name on the X, and I just say, yeah, well, I'm a Christian, and it's biblically, the Jerusalem, the Jewish are God's chosen people. But I doesn't mean that I pray for these kids. Like, listen, Hamas is not feeding them. They've been told there are both sides, people in Palestine and on Israel, saying that they have food there. They're just not distributing it to the kids. Why? To make Israel look bad? I don't know. But I tell them nobody should be suffering. I don't care if you're Palestinian or if you're, Jewish. Nobody should be. This is terrible what's happening. Same thing with Russia and the Ukraine. People are dying, and it's sad. I don't like to see that. I don't care what side. I mean, I don't understand why well, yes, I do. The college students that are being brainwashed, it's all to destroy America. I mean, like that's a whole different, that's a whole different ball of wax, but yeah, they're being brainwashed for that reason. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. I didn't really see that until probably the last 5 or 6 years, where it's really become open and out that the indoctrination of our children and younger generations started in college, and I'm glad to see that the trade school, promoting trade schools, respiratory therapy actually started out that way, 40 years ago. I remember when we used to be inhalation therapists. I never was one. I've always been a respiratory therapist, but I worked with people who were actually inhalation therapists, and then it transitioned. And then, most RT schools now are 4-year programs, suggesting that we go ahead and try to get our master's degree. I've been in leadership roles before. God's been very clear in showing me that the gifts and talents that He's given me are best served at the patient's bedside. And my ego says, well, you'd be a really good supervisor or manager, blah, blah. And I just kind of turn it off, because I know that I always say ego is the downfall of mankind.
Yeah.
And my job today is to work on being a more humble man, and try to fulfill what God wants me to fulfill.
Yeah.
Most days I fail at that, but I can always pray, ask for forgiveness, and start over the next day.
Right. But that's important, though. Ask for forgiveness and mean it, and then start fresh and don't beat yourself up. God's not. He's going, hey, just learn from this, move on and keep going. I just want to know that God is graceful and He's forgiving, and He just wants you to keep on evolving down that the righteous path, and, make Him happy. Well, Tim, I have really enjoyed this. I feel like we have so much more to talk about. So I hope that you come back sometime. And
send me an invite.
All right. Sounds good. Because this was a lot of fun, and you're a very interesting person. And again, from the bottom of my heart, thank you for your service. And I look forward to hopefully having you back on in the near future. So
That's good.
All right. Awesome. Thank you so much. Great meeting you. Thank you.